everybody. Welcome to the show. This is, what's the show called? No, so you're about to graduate college. I'm Patrick Kling. So we're starting the show a little bit differently today. We have an excellent lineup. But I wanted to take a moment and just acknowledge that basically it's been 4 years since the Pulse massacre. On basically the night of June 11th, I went out with friends to celebrate my dear friend's birthday. We went to Parliament House, which was a gay bar in Orlando, Florida. I woke up the next morning to text messages from my friends, family, mom, all very concerned about my livelihood because they know I have a lot of gay friends and didn't know where I was that night. And I woke up to a completely changed world. What we now know is that basically a maniac came to Orlando to spread terror and indiscriminately was looking for locations to do that, and happened to go to Pulse and murder 49 people and injure dozens others, and lives were destroyed, lives were ruined. The entire city of Orlando was affected. And I wanted to take a moment to just pause and invite everyone to do a moment of silence with me for 49 seconds in remembrance of those, all of us who have been affected by the tragedy. And then we'll be right back after that. Thank you. Okay. Hi. Hey, Dave. Hey, Kelly. How you guys doing? Welcome. Welcome to the show. I know it's uncertain, crazy circumstances, all that. We appreciate everybody who's watching around the globe. We have an amazing show planned for today. And I just want to start off by thanking our guests, RJ and Cynthia, who, you know what, let's just bring them on right now. They're fantastic human beings. Everybody go ahead and say hello to RJ and Cynthia.
Hey, everyone.
You know, we've been really working on this content, and we know that there is a ton of content out there. People don't know what to do during this time. And I've been inspired by both of the people that are on our show today. RJ and I connected several months ago. And Cynthia is just a bolt of lightning in a bottle, and inspiring a lot of the activity that I've done. And so a big thank you guys for coming on the show. We have a lot of different things to talk about. And, you know, I'm not a therapist of any kind, but anybody that's watching, I know a lot of us I feel powerless about what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, with diversity and inclusion, and we're working towards steps that everyone can take. So if anybody who's watching wants to just chime in with a couple of words of how you're feeling right now, we would love to have you guys do that. Feel free to just describe how you're doing in a couple of words. We'd be open to that, to just start expressing how we feel. This is a safe space to borrow some words that Cynthia said, which is that we're going to make mistakes. We're trying to hear people, and we're trying to do the best we can. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. But welcome. I've done enough talking. Kelly and Dave, do you have anything to say? Please, you know.
I think mine's going to be a lot of crying.
No, I just appreciate the ability. Uh-oh, that could happen. Hello. Sorry. No, I appreciate the ability to use our platform and have this conversation, because it's really something that that I think a lot of people are trying to figure out. And so, you know, while we're here, we might as well try to figure it out together. So thanks guys for coming on. I really appreciate that. And I know I'm going to be taking a back seat to most of the conversation, but I appreciate you letting me be involved.
Kelly, before we let any of our guests say anything, do you want to finish your thought?
I was just saying, like, it's such an honor to be included in this group, and I'm thankful that we have the ability to bring awareness to this problem. I mean, obviously there's a lot of awareness right now, but we have to keep the awareness going. So I'm thankful that you guys both joined us, and that we're able to have this discussion. It's super important.
Yeah. And just, of course, Lacey Campbell is feeling sad, angry, ready to do better. Thanks for doing this today. So appreciate your feedback and comment. We're gonna, you know, this is, I think right now it's all about listening and hearing, and then healing and action and change can happen. So we have a lot to talk about. So I'd love to start by introducing Cynthia and RJ to the panel. I'm going to go ahead and Dave and Kelly, we'll have you guys back on a little bit later in the show. But just for now, just so it's a little bit easier. But for now, hi guys. How are you doing today?
Hey.
Hey.
Great. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Whole bundle of emotions for all y'all chiming in on the comments. Just because I'm in an exec position and middle-aged, and some of you may have heard me talk about some of these issues at conferences over the past several years, doesn't mean that this is any less deeply emotional or hard or challenging. This is a time of really big feelings and really hard feelings that many folks probably haven't been confronting in themselves or chewing through very intentionally, and it's okay for it to be hard. So how am I doing?
And what shirt are you rocking today? Museums are
not neutral.
Okay. RJ, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Of course, with all that's going on in the world, there's so much hurt and pain in the minority community. But this is a brand new step. It's a very strong step. It's unfortunate that it has to come to the death of another Black man in the police. But to bring the conversation forward is also a great step. And I'm starting to see a lot of great companies, even the next door neighbor, everyone taking an initiative to make a difference. And so yeah, this is a revolution that we're in right now. And so to have the conversation, especially in themed entertainment, which is also has a lot of roots in racial discrimination, that all the way to the beginning of sideshows and beyond, to be able to have that conversation is truly a step forward.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, you know, we have a lot of people watching, and we love for you guys to have an opportunity to kind of explain who you are, where you've been, and then we know you both are in charge, or both are a part of two great organizations. So I'd love to just start with RJ, and we can run through your history a bit. How do you feel? How does that sound to you?
Why not? Let's go for it.
We'll just act like we didn't plan all this. All right, let me just
get read the cue. Yeah, of course. I would love to go first. Okay, so again, my name is RJ Temple. I'm the creator and founder of the Upbeat Imagination Workshop. It's one of the few African American owned themed entertainment companies that focus on creating assets for attractions and interactive media. Moving forward, I have this is a great picture of me when I was 5 years old at a theme park. Of course, everyone knows how popular the dog is. But as a kid, I always had a passion for experiences for families. it really was something that I always look forward to. You know, my family had major traditions to go to theme parks every single year. And one thing that was interesting for me is that I always went to the theme parks with a different type of ear. I always went to not only meet characters and to ride the rides, but to also, you know, hear the sounds, you know, listen to the music. And so, believe it or not, at 5, I was playing drums at that time. I'm as a musician. So a lot of the theme park life inspired me to pursue music. And so moving ahead, I went to school for music at Georgia Southern University. I got my major in music there. Actually, in the left is me in high school playing piano for the choir. I know you, Pat. I know you would love that shirt. But yeah, that was my passion for many years. I played numerous instruments, and I decided to make that a career goal of mine to pursue music. What's so interesting is that even though as a musician, going to school for music, I always was very intrigued, especially, you know, with going to theme parks still, how music and visuals go hand in hand. And so I started really toying around, and even as a musician, for some odd reason, I always had, you know, a character involved, or I had some kind of visuals involved, or something with projection. Even in this clip is actually from the Black Heritage Festival, where I was playing the guitar, but my percussion player was actually a character as well. And so it's pretty neat how I was able to, you know, early on to embrace the power of music and the power of having themed entertainment characters go in line together. And so it started a conversation where I was like, hey, there has to be a way to merge the two. And so I started creating my own characters, and I came up with a series called RJ and the Upbeats. And RJ and the Upbeats it actually started in 2002 at my home church. And it started from going from, you know, small shows from here and there to actually people asking me to go and perform places. Of course, it was so long ago, you can tell it says myspace.com. That was quite a few years ago. But as I started creating more and more shows, I started getting asked, you know, by the school system, as you can see some of the kids there having a good time at the show. It was great to be able to inspire kids to learn about music, to learn about education in such a unique way. And so I was able to apply my love for story and my love for theater alongside with music. Going to the next slide, you'll see a lot of the kids that were there. We had plenty of shows. We went on a school tour, 13-14 school tour in the Georgia area. That's where I'm from, Savannah, Georgia. And I'm telling you, those kids were really excited. And that's when I realized that we had something unique and fun for all ages. And not only that, for the African-American community, which a lot of times wasn't able to have the theme park experiences and go to the major theme parks due to funding. And so I saw as an obligation to create something from the ground up that never was done before. And that's how I created the Upbeat Imagination Workshop. And the Upbeat Imagination Workshop had 12 different stage plays over original characters and dozens of soundtracks. And we'll show you a clip of some of the cool things we've done over the years. All right.
I
And
love
so,
everything about that, man. Everything about that is just so cool. I love Muppets. I love your creativity. I just love all the joy that you brought to everybody. So, God, I've seen that video several times at this moment in time. Just wanted to thank you for what you did, and I just love it. But I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go away now.
thank you. Yeah, and that's the cool thing about the Upbeat Imagination workshop. It actually is an opportunity for people to be able to come together, time together. Our schools have always been tied around, you know, team and courage and spending time together, as well as learning about the differences between one another, how to utilize teamwork, all these different things. So moving forward, you can see some more shots of some of the stuff that we've done. And the cool thing is, at the gate, these shows were really getting elaborate and elaborate as the years went by. We started in schools, and then it ended up to where we started going to theaters. The theaters that we were getting invited to, big festivals, was being invited to do workshops. And even with the Savannah Music Festival has invited us to come in. And the cool thing is, a lot of these schools didn't really go on field trips, and so a lot of times we had to come up with the concepts for them to come see shows, and we actually created experiences for them that was actually originated just for those kids. At the time, in this particular clip here, we were teaching them about the importance of money and also the importance of reading, and those kids were just engaged, and they came by the busloads to the historical Savannah Theater downtown. We also, moving forward, seeing how we expanded in live shows, we also started to get into more books and actual cartoons. And to keep in mind, this was all self-funded. We didn't have a lot of support. In many cases, it was just me as a staff member trying to figure out unique things, and then just actually, as money comes and as I go and do shows and be a musician on the side, I would fund fund somebody to work on the cartoons or create a book for us. Like these two here, Smash Invasions is a comic book that actually is out to this day on Comixology, and also Jerry Said There's a Monster Under My Bed is a kid's book as well, that we've created to help kids that are afraid of the dark. And so with all that being said, there was quite a few things that we was able to do. But of course, moving forward, trying to find more innovative ways to expand. And so we actually started looking into gaming. And what's cool is that having a background as a musician and knowing how to do a little sound design as well, because I also went to Berklee College of Music for audio production after I graduated from Georgia Southern. I was able to apply those tools and techniques. And we looked up, and then I had over 70 games that had sound design, music composition, and voice acting on across the world, including 2 of the games that won Parents' Choice Awards. We also had one attraction that we worked on in the downtown Savannah area called American Prohibition Museum, that talked about the legalization of alcohol. And it was 3 soundscapes that were there. At the time, it was only a dog barking in the entire building. And so I only had 5 weeks to put it together. And so I went from each area and was able to put sound design in there. So it was a lot of cool things I was able to do. And especially African American, and doing a lot of these cool things. I was definitely a lone ranger. But I had to figure out a way to move forward. And so I took a big step, and I decided to go where themed entertainment is huge, in Florida. And so I took a big step, was able to get a great opportunity utilizing my puppet skills with some major companies. I've done some magical things. Moving to the next slide, I've done some magical things with great people. I also done great adventures with others. And I also was able to be spooky at other companies as well. So it was really great to be able to be a part of great companies that did amazing things. But it wasn't until I got with a good friend of mine named Melody Metheny, who's a part of the Slice Creative Network. And she actually brought more awareness of, hey, I know you've done, shows and stuff, but hey, there's a way for you to be able to utilize that in themed entertainment. And it's interesting. You never really know you're a part of something until you meet somebody and all the pieces come together. I didn't know I was in themed entertainment for 20 years until 6 years ago. And so that's the interesting thing about this, is that a lot of the minority community, we're equipped to have a lot of the skill sets, but a lot of times we don't even know that we qualify. And so with this particular program, it helped me understand where I was at and be able to utilize my skills in a unique way. Going into that, the same companies that I did a lot of stuff as a performer, I also was able to go back into those companies and create amazing shows and create amazing attractions. As a writer and a music producer, going on TAs and opening things worldwide. It was truly a remarkable opportunity. But one thing that I reflected on were those kids. And this is one of my favorite pictures from the shows. This is a good example how the African-American community don't really get an opportunity to be up close to these amazing things that we're around all the time. And so I said, hey, having all this experience now, what can I do as a vessel to be able to bring back that same information to my African-American community and the minority community in whole, and be able to share my story so they can be influenced and say, hey, this is a reachable goal as well. And so that's how I created the Creative Quest Foundation. And the Creative Quest Foundation focused on minorities that are pursuing themed entertainment and getting them around, people in the industry and learning and growing and building their resumes, giving them all the tools that they need to move forward. Here's a couple of clips here. A creative brief from one of our great techs, Nick. That's going to give you an overview of Creative Quest as well as the trailer. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Nick, and thanks for tuning in to CQF TV. The Creative Quest Foundation focuses on minorities pursuing a career in themed entertainment. From writing shows for a local theater to developing the next major attraction for a cutting-edge theme park, CQF provides resources and opportunities to build your passion for creative development and the arts. Diversity and inclusion is the future of the industry. Taking action to diversify talent in the creative space and empowering leaders will take themed entertainment to the next level. CQF believes in community and sharing knowledge to those who come from all walks of life. We provide educational events and activities such as mixers, workshops, speed networking sessions, artist showcases, concerts, and more. We move together as a family to bring about positive change and promote equal opportunity for everyone with a love for the arts. Join our initiative celebrating the power of diversity in the world of themed entertainment. Check out the latest news, media, merch, and more on our website, creativequestfoundation.com.
So before you move on, there's a photo that you brushed by very quickly, which is this photo.
Yes.
I wanted to point out that this is a Slice event put on by Brian Morrow back when he was at SeaWorld, friend of the show. He was on this show. Melody was on the show. If she's not in this picture, she is taking the picture. She's probably in this photo, right? And then I'm actually in this photo. So
you are in the checkered shirt.
Yeah, the tallest guy there next to you. That's me. So it is a very small industry. So I just wanted to shed some light on that. That was the opening construction walkthrough of Mako. But not very important, but just wanted to make sure that people understood that it's just cool that we were in the same photo together. And here we are today.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about this is that, that was such a pivotal moment for me to be, that was like my invitation into the industry. And so it's almost like it's divine destiny in a way. And it's so amazing how, as you pay attention, as you go on your journeys in life, you'll get small little bits and pieces of things that may happen in the future that you'll just pass by. And so you look at pictures, be like, hey, if that was a snake, it would have bit me, So it's amazing how now we're really great friends, and we didn't even know each other at that time. So that's incredible.
It's good. Take pictures.
Incredible moment.
So we have another clip. So let's roll clip, and then we'll catch up with Cynthia.
Creating a smile, getting lost in the moment, and living the dream is what themed entertainment is all about. And here in Central Florida, we are the entertainment capital of the world, able to live that dream each and every day. A living celebration filled with artists, managers, engineers, and talent from across the globe. Diversity and inclusion for all walks of life, creating, building, learning, and growing together is the key to a bright future for the entertainment industry. The Creative Quest Foundation focuses on guiding minorities interested in pursuing a career in themed entertainment, providing a path to success with workshops, events, mixers, and more that will be life-changing and uplifting, while at the same time giving back to those in need. The Creative Quest Foundation, celebrating the power of diversity in the world of make-believe.
Yeah. So that is. Thank you so much.
You have a new fan, Kenneth. RJ, you are so creative and have such a big heart. I hope one day I get to work with you on a project. You're getting some fans, RJ.
Hey, let's change the world together. And I mean that's the cool thing about what we're doing with Creative Quest is that we're bridging the gaps. We're bridging the worlds together. And imagine how cool it is with a diverse board creating diverse park experiences, diverse creative experiences. And that's the cool thing about what we do here. We really believe that diversity is the future of themed entertainment. And quickly, our three pillars are gather, grow, and give. Gather is what's important for the minority community, a place for them to be able to feel like they belong. There's been so many things over the years where it feels like, as a minority in this field, it's like, oh, I don't see anyone that looks like me. How can I be a part of this? And so with Creative Quest, we try to be a place where it's for, hey, you are invited to come. And you also are invited to grow with us, to be able to learn and about how this complex machine works and be able to partner with others. So you can build a better future. And then not only that, once we get the information, we give it back to the community so we can make amazing things. So that's my story. And if you want more information about Creative Quest, follow us on creativequestfoundation.com. And we're changing the world. It's going to be a great time.
And I think we'll be talking about Creative Quest and all the things you do later on in our discussion as we but thank you. I love it. I think that like Kenneth picked up on it that you just like radiate sunshine, joy, rainbows. I enjoy every conversation we have. So RJ, just thank you for being you.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, Cynthia, hi.
Hi. I'm not sunshine, joy, and rainbows. Particularly since I'm the person who gathered some of the really dispiriting data that we're going to be going over later. Super not sunshine, joy, and rainbows. Hi, everyone. I'm Cynthia Sharp, she, her. I'm Principal Cultural Attractions and Research for ThinkWell Group, which is headquartered in Los Angeles, but I live in Kansas City and I've telecommuted for 17 years. In addition, I'm the co-founder of Harriet B's Daughters, which is an inclusion, diversity, and equity access group in themed entertainment. So Patrick, you want to go to my next slide, please?
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
No, it's totally fine. And so anybody watching, the slide advance runs a little bit slow, so apologies for any weirdness. I'm actually a human geneticist by training, but realized that academia and research science was not the path for me and ran screaming from it and found myself at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. And I was there so long ago that beautiful front lawn was actually parking. I was at MSI for 7 years in a variety of roles, project management, education manager, exhibit developer, moving into strategy and business planning in temporary and traveling exhibits. And then we moved down to Kansas City. And after consulting for a year and a half, I joined the core team at ThinkWell. And Patrick, if you want to go back to my slides. So if you ever want to blow a 2-year-old's mind, have them meet the real Elmo. I've worked on a variety of museum, zoo, aquarium, and cultural attraction projects, usually in the capacity of creative director or project executive, including Sesame Street Presents The Body. That's my kid when he was 2, and he would be mortified to know that I've shared that because he's a high school going into senior year now, which tells you how long ago that project was. You can go to the next one. We can just blaze through these. We can get to discussion. Fernbank Museum of Natural History Nature Quest exhibit, which is for young children, 10 and under, in Atlanta, but also some other themed entertainment projects like Warner Brothers Movie Studios presents The Making of Harry Potter in Leavesden outside London. The Hunger Games, the exhibition, which is a touring show. The Richard M. Nixon Presidential Library and Museum, which was quite the project. Next one. But Thinkwell does things which are not just museum and cultural attraction work. That's actually just one of the spaces we're in. Google is one of our largest clients. We've done a lot of work on that. So that is one of their corporate B2B centers. They really value experience design, and we've worked with them on a variety of spaces. Next one, probably one of the most fun projects I ever worked on, Warner Brothers Abu Dhabi, which is the world's largest indoor theme park. And do I have one more? Yeah. And I mentioned at the top, Harriet B's daughters. So principal cultural attractions and research at Thinkwell, and being a creative director there is my day job. In addition, Nicola Rossini and I co-founded Harriet B's daughters pretty much in the wake of the 2016 election. She and I, both mid to mid-late career in our time in the industry, we were used to people who had just graduated college or who had just entered the themed entertainment workforce coming to us, seeking mentorship or seeking coaching. But in the lead up to the 2016 election and immediately after, we and some other more senior women in particular in the industry noticed we had a lot more of our peers, but even women who had been in the industry longer than us, coming to us for advice, coming to us with questions and wanting coaching. And we were seeing the sea change. And we realized that there wasn't really a network out there to be doing this kind of work, and that our industry has the potential to really move the cultural needle at large. There are some stats that I like to throw around an awful lot, courtesy of AAM, the American Alliance of Museums, which is the largest umbrella organization over museums in the US. It encompasses everything from little 4-person historic houses in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and everything in between. There are over 850 million. This data is not in this part of the deck, Patrick, so you don't need to go there. Sorry. There are over 850 million visits to museums in the US every year. 7% of the world's population every year goes to a theme park owned and operated by one of the 10 largest theme park companies. So everything that we make as an industry is seen by a whole lot of eyeballs. And so the goal with Harriet B's daughters is to not only provide support for folks with an emphasis on inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and social justice for themselves and within their workspaces, but to help transform the systems within their workspaces and the work products we're making to be more inclusive and equitable. Because the work we in this industry do, we're putting out into the world who the heroes are. We're putting out into the world who the villains are. We're putting out into the world what people should aspire to, you know, what we want the world to look like. So if we do a better job in what we're saying in our creative work products, we can move the cultural needle. And so that's the focus with HBD. We do, just like RJ and his team, we do mentorship, we do a whole lot of panels at conferences, we do white papers. We help people write session submissions to get onto panels at conferences, because that's a huge stumbling block, not only in terms of getting information out there, but also in terms of people being able to move up the ladder in their own careers. You know, figuring out how to coach people to move onto boards, how to get onto a committee and then onto a board, how to get on those stages, and how to build that base so that they can, in their workspaces, be like, look at everything I've done, look at how well I have helped the company be a thought leader. It's time to give me that promotion. So we do a lot of work along those metrics.
Yeah, and I've heard of Harriet B's Daughters in the past. And I know that I know Nicola, so it's so cool that you started that organization, and people can Google it to get involved. Is that the best? Is that the best way to try to look at your website and get involved?
HarrietBdaughters.org. Upper, it should be on your right-hand corner. There's a Get Involved button. It'll take you to a link where you can sign up. Full disclosure, I'm expecting after this webinar for me personally, because I'm the person behind that email address, to get the onslaught of signups. Please be patient with me as I hash through them all. I apologize.
No. So just we have a note, Kenneth. If you have IAPA, go see Cynthia speak there as well. She was amazing last year. So you got another fan.
Thanks, man.
So we normally on the show, we've been breaking things out and having Kelly and David take a segment. But for this discussion from here on out, I want to bring everybody on for a very open discussion. We have the sad data portion, although David's not there. David's having some issues. So David, whenever you get back, we'll include you back in. But yes, I'm not sure if you have a mantra for this, but it's definitely the sad, sad data.
It is not the sunshine and rainbows portion of this discussion. There's this sort of vibe I encounter not infrequently in themed entertainment, particularly when I'm in a space like a TEA event or an IAPA event, where there's this belief that museums are doing this better. We just need to do what museums are doing. Museums are mission-based and mission-oriented, and surely they're totally cool on this. No, they're not. Please don't look to museums to save you on this one. We all got to do the work. Hey, look, Dave's back, or not back. Maybe back. No.
Wait, he's kind of wishing it right now. Let's see.
Museums are a little bit further on down the path in engaging with diversity, inclusion, equity, and access issues, but they are by no means, as an industry segment, kicking ass and taking names at it. First sad statistic, please. So in 2015, the Mellon Foundation, in conjunction with AAM, who I mentioned earlier, and the American Association of Art Museum Directors, did a survey. Most leadership, particularly like C-suite, when I say C-suite, I mean the C stands for chief, whether it's chief executive officer, chief marketing officer, chief curator, chief experience officer, chief of exhibits, or senior vice president of exhibits, whatever. So C-suite it's that executive core that all the decisions in an organization lead up to ultimately. 82% of education and curatorial and leadership staff in art museums in 2015, 82% of that was white. That statistic has barely budged in 5 years. We go to the next one. So that's about staffing. Let's talk about who's coming in the door. We like to think that museum visitorship is really, really diverse. Spoiler, it's not. 2017 research, again by AAM, the American Alliance of Museums. If you want to go on their website, it's AAM, I want to say dash US, it might be underscore. AAM, see it's going like that, .org. You can do a search on American Alliance of Museums as well and find their website. In 2017, 9% of all US visitors, so no foreign tourists, but 9% of all US visitors to American museums. So that includes everything: art, natural history, science, cultural, historical, all of it. 9% of all of those visitors were not white. That does not match the demographics of America. So museums are doing a really bad job of getting a diverse audience and a representational audience in the door. Next fun-filled statistic, super fun. 4% of all leadership roles in US art museums are held by Black Americans. And next one. So the 4% was just art museums. 3% of leadership positions across all museum types. So again, art, history, science, natural history, children's, I neglected to mention children's earlier. All of those museums are held by Latinx Americans. This is really important when you think about those leadership positions, because those are the people who are making decisions on how money gets spent. They're the ones making decisions on ultimately who gets hired in for sort of director level folks, on what exhibit projects and processes. There we go. There's the address. Thank you, Cynthia. I always blank if it's dash or underscore. They're the ones who are making decisions on exhibition priority. They're the ones who are making decisions on marketing campaigns. They're making the decisions, and they're taking decisions to the board of trustees, more on them in a moment, in terms of those really big things like, are we going to do a strategic campaign? Are we going to expand the building? Are we going to build a new building? And germane for all of us in the industry, if you're on the consultant side, those are the folks who are making decisions about those really big contracts of who's going to get hired for those big jobs. Next slide. All right, so I just mentioned boards of trustees. Boards of trustees ultimately hold a lot of power. They have their eyes on the overall financial package and stability of the institution. They usually have a finance board. They usually have an exhibitions board. And that team of C-suite executives, they have to defend decisions to the board. 46% of U.S. museum boards of trustees are entirely white. Yeah, Lacey has an appropriate response to that statistic. It's a bad one. Can we go on to the next slide? All right, so, but if you look at a lot of the data that's come up about museums, and you look at their press releases and stuff, they're trumpeting that, hey, we're more diverse. But diversity does not mean inclusion. If you look at where we are seeing better diversity in museums, you're seeing it at entry level oftentimes. You're seeing it in frontline, front of house staff, visitor services, food services, janitorial, retail. You're not seeing inclusion. You are not seeing representation up the chain of decision making. This doesn't apply just to museums. We see this across all industries. McKinsey partnered up with leanin.org several years ago to do annual reports on women in the workplace. In the beginning of this process, they were fairly women focused, but in the past couple of years, they have become more intersectional in what data they're collecting and what analyses they're running. This is from 2018, and if you look at it, as you go up from entry level all the way to that C-suite level, you see white men beginning to occupy a much bigger percentage of how wide the pipeline is there. And granted, there are a lot more entry-level positions than there are C-suite positions. It makes sense when you think about it. But white men hold a dominating percentage of those upper-level decision-making roles, particularly relative to men of color and women of color. So all of this is a really not happy set of data on where we're at in industries as a whole, you know, from the McKinsey report, but museums in particular. And RJ alluded to it when he talked about resumes and not realizing for a long time that what he was doing was actually themed entertainment. When we look at how resumes are formatted, when we look at how resumes are reviewed, when we look at what we expect out of a portfolio, there's a lot of coded bias in there. And if we're going to make a move towards inclusion as opposed to diversity as an industry, we're going to have to do a lot better at rooting out where a lot of that bias exists. And we're going to have to do a lot better at training and coaching people who are entering the industry or who have even been in adjacent or allied industries for a while and do not realize how applicable their skill sets are. We're going to have to spend some time and effort coaching folks on how to communicate their skill set so that it resonates for the people in themed entertainment who aren't doing the work of rooting out unconscious bias. But also getting themed entertainment companies to realize that is a completely applicable skill set. It's okay that they haven't done all these turns in the field on giant theme park projects. This person brings great things to the table. For anybody who lived through the 2008 economic tanking, all you have to do is look around our industry right now and realize that there's a shortage of talent in the sort of highly skilled mid-career tier, because a lot of folks got forced out of the industry in 2008 and a lot of projects shut down. Well, a lot of companies base promotion in part on what have you opened, not what have you worked on, what have you opened, what have you done, how many turns have you done in the field. Well, when all that contracted 2008, those opportunities to build your career evaporated. And if we don't change how we not just recruit, but retain and promote, if we keep those same structures for retention and promotion, we're going to have a problem, not just right now in the current economic downturn, but 10 years from now when we have not developed that mid-career talent pool because we've forced them out, or we've said to them, oh, you haven't done enough. We're not moving you up the chain yet. I've talked a lot, so time for
No problem. So we have the data. We know there's a problem. And from here on out, I'm probably just going to keep most of us on screen during the entire conversation, unless I drop something, which I just did. And just I want to tell everybody who's watching right now, if you have any questions or comments, please don't be afraid to say them on the chat feature. I think that right now what's so important is that we have open discussions and we ask questions. I've been asking questions of my wife and trying to hear things from her perspective and from industry colleagues and people out of the industry, and having a safe environment to just talk and stumble. What's so interesting is that this may be very new to a lot of people, but it's not new to Cynthia and RJ and Kelly. Me and aspects of it, myself and David. Sorry to throw you under the bus, David, but we're straight white guys. I presume. I don't know if you're. Oh no, you're married. I'm married, and we're the people that grew up going to theme parks, as Cynthia mentioned in a pre-call, who were inspired by it and wanted to get into the industry because of it. And that's a completely different version of how people get in, or the type of industry that we need to have. And so I'm aware of that, and which is why we wanted to bring everybody on to just talk about it. I know, Kelly, you had a few questions and comments and things. Do you want to just start the conversation? I'll throw to you.
Yeah. A lot of people have been reaching out, just asking me what can they do? How can they help? They feel, and we've seen it in the comments thus far, they feel angry and sad, and it's nothing that the majority of our entire community hasn't felt at some point in time. And so there's a solidarity there, but at the same time, what are some steps that they can take to kind of move forward, I guess. And I'm going to shut up and listen.
RJ, do you want to tackle first? Okay.
Yeah, of course. One thing that's interesting about this is that what causes a lot of these issues is philosophy. How you interpret humanity, people, a person. And that causes a lot of the issues, and that's the root of the system. That I don't see you as equal to me, and so that I'm going to make something complex so you cannot achieve the same goals that I have, because I know what's the benefit of being here. I see the money, I see all these different things. I don't want anyone that doesn't look like me or doesn't have the same background as me, to be in the same realm. So you got to keep in mind that that's kind of the starting point. And so to fix this, you have to do the opposite. Instead of trying to make people, push people out, invite them in, and that is a choice. And I think a lot of this, if people made decisions to love one another, to care for each other, and I understand it still is a lot of politics. You still got to have people that qualify for the role. I get all that. then there are times you have to keep in mind, especially for me as an African American male, I always had to have 3, 4, 5 times as much talent. I mean, look at what I had to do, just on my own, just to get somebody to see my hand raised. I literally had to, all those shows, all the production, a lot of that was work that was out of my own pocket, didn't have any support, didn't have any accountability, have someone I can call and say, hey, how do I budget for this? How do I create a show? It really is a Lone Ranger experience. And so to what you're saying, for people like me who have a passion, it's important for people that have the power to empower us and to give us an opportunity just to be heard. And then you never know. That could end up being the next big thing, but it can't be based off of assumptions that someone doesn't know just because of the color of their skin.
Yeah.
I want to hold on really quick. So a lot of things I've been hearing, because I have a lot of different people and a lot of different social circles that I've been talking to about this. One thing that it's been very overwhelming information for me is if you are if you're a white person and you're trying to figure out how to help, don't talk to your Black friends, yes, and ask them is it okay that I ask you this question? But don't just assume that they want to deal with this, because this is something they've been dealing with in our country specifically for 400 plus years. So the burden is on us to do the learning, not on the Black community to do the teaching, because they've been trying to teach us for many, many, many years, and it hasn't gotten through to us until this blatant act. I'm sorry if I'm overstepping. I felt like I needed to say that.
Not at all. You're exactly right. It takes time to fix what 400 years of damage plus has done. And so it's not going to be an overnight. It's not going to be a regular conversation that just, this is the answer. Okay, now we can just move forward. Literally, it is you have to be, the thing is consistency and feeling like you have an obligation to make a difference. And especially in this field, you have to keep in mind, there's a lot of roots, especially in entertainment, where there's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. It's an interesting story I wanted to share if I can, Pat.
Please.
I was looking at some historical moments in themed entertainment. Keep in mind, this is also the area of themed entertainment where blackface was part of this. So keep in mind, this is something that happened. I had to look up, and I encourage all of you to look up the Muse brothers. In the 1800s, there were albino Black brothers from Virginia, were stolen from their mom at the age of 6 and 9. And sold by a bounty hunter to a sideshow promoter. And they were told that their mom was dead, and they were found to work for the circus for 18 years without pay. They were also known as the White Ecuadorian Cannibals. They did not reunite with their mom until 1927, where they found out that it was a lie. And their mom went to court, and they were able to get justice for $100,000. This is themed entertainment. And just imagine the stories. And they were 6 and 9 years old, And so when you have those moments where this is the roots of the industry, there's a lot of things that has to get fixed. And a lot of times they feel like, okay, I can sign a check, or I could have this conversation or that conversation, and it's all over with. That was just 2 generations ago, And so there has to be a what I call a deep cleansing, where you have to find an obligation to not just say, I get it, but to actually say, as a human, I respect you. As a human, I respect your gift and what you do, and I want to give you an opportunity to be heard. that's when you change the needle, and that's when change actually happens. But you got to keep in mind, this is the foundation that has been passed on from generation to generation. And those are deep throat cuts. And I mean, I didn't even want to tell you, a lot of names that was tied to these same brothers. These are names that we all know of companies that have done amazing, stuff over the years that's tied to these brothers being passed around like scenic, from circus to circus. You got to keep in mind, this is the root of it, and we can get to it, but we have to have this honest conversation. It starts with stuff like this, but yeah, it's a lot of roots that has to be pulled out.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Kat.
I'm so sorry, Patrick. I know. One of the things we had in our pre-show discussion was things that are like problems in our current industry with implicit and unintended discrimination. But those, RJ, to go back onto your point, those have roots in intended discrimination and intended bias. So, what we see as implicit and unintended and subtle and oh, I didn't know any better. It's easy to say that, but when you know history, and I'm a student of history, when you know history, you can see those roots. You're like, what? How did you not know? And I have to calm myself, because I know that there are people who don't know that history and haven't had the mirror shown to them and haven't seen, how their actions are harmful. And they're just now starting to see that. And I'm trying to be cognizant of that and be like, awesome. Welcome to the party. Here's everything you need to know for the past 400 something years.
Cynthia, it looks like you were.
Patrick, I know that you were going to toss to a couple of the questions that we've seen, what can I, as somebody new to the industry or relatively young in the industry, do? We've had four people ask that. I wanted to really briefly address a couple of little things that we've discussed that have come up in discussion, and then pivot a little bit more strongly to that question. Patrick, I'm going to noogie you, because I'm married too, and just because I'm married doesn't mean I'm straight. I'm bi, and I've been out for the majority of my life at this point. So don't assume. Dear white people, it's totally fine. It happens all the time. Dear white folks on the webinar, get comfortable with being wrong. Get real comfortable with being wrong. And even if you have been engaging in this work, even if you've had an education which is far more aware than what I grew up with, particularly my junior high years, and I'm going to tell a very brief story about that in a moment. Even if you are an incredibly well-read student of history and nothing in the 1619 Project by the New York Times surprised you or came as news to you, you're going to screw this up, and you need to be comfortable with that. Some of y'all have heard me speak at conference after conference after conference. I screw this up all the time, and I am having to very intentionally and painfully and frequently interrogate my own bias. And there are places and ways that my complacency with structure have allowed bias to flourish. And that's not okay. And I have to own it. And I have to take it out and look at it and figure out where I got complacent and try not to do that moving forward. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be ignorant to some of this stuff, but at this point, there's no excuse to remain ignorant. I want to make sure I get the name right because I saw the comment go by. Xavier Oliver said, oppression of voice and perspective is like a Photoshop mask layer with an opacity slide based on skin tone. At this point, and with everything that's going on, there is no reason to just let that opacity layer slides stay all the way to one side. We know this shit is wrong. And it really does fall to us as white folks to do the hard work of educating ourselves. Look at the 1619 Project. If you are coming from a family or an upbringing or an educational system which has been particularly biased, I highly recommend the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, white female writer. But if that's the language that your family is steeped in or your workplace is steeped in, it can help you understand how to start dissecting that. So you want to talk about Race by Ijeoma Oluo, please get the newer version, which has a blue cover, not the beige cover, if at all possible. It is a phenomenal resource. So you want to be, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, also an incredible, phenomenal resource. It's on us as white folks to do that work, to read those things, to immerse ourselves in it, and to listen, and to look inward and outward. Now, pivoting to the question that people had about, but I'm fairly new to the industry, what can I do? So there are different levels. There's the work that you have to do on yourself, and we just talked through a little bit of that. There's the work that you can do in your workplace. And freely admit, if you're a new college grad or you're new to the industry or you've just job switched in the industry and you're building up a base of credibility within your new employer and you're worried about things because it's a shaky economy right now, you don't have a lot of capital in that space. Freely admit it. But there are some things you can do depending upon, obviously, what your role is within the structure. Be really intentional with the creative work product you're making. If you're a writer, the things that you are creating and writing, or if you're on the creative director track, you should be interrogating your ideas and your writing for bias. Are you always describing people so that they code white? Are you always describing people so that they code, married heterosexual couple with 2 kids? Are you always writing, if you've got a hero villain piece, are you always writing the villain so it codes as a person of color? If you're working with an artist or you are an artist or a graphic designer, it's the same kind of process of looking at what you're producing and how you're representing and who falls into what tropes. It's time to bust the tropes. If you're brand new at a company or you're still in that period where it's like you're reading through the handbook, you can ask questions. I said this at the TEA talk back in September, but particularly if a company's been around for a long time, that employee handbook, number one, it's where a lot of bias lurks. But number two, that handbook has just sort of grown by accretion over the years. Rarely does a company actually take the time to spend the time and resources to look at their employee handbook and their policies, whole cloth, soup to nuts, and do a bias check on it and revise it entirely. Normally, it's like when you give the kid the big bucket of Legos, and over the course of a week, it starts out as this one thing, but over the course of the week, it becomes this giant structure that makes no sense. It's like that. So you have the power to ask questions. You have the power to ask for clarification. And oftentimes asking the question makes the, oh shit, light bulb go off. You can use your, and I don't mean this word in a bad way, you can use your naivete as a way to shine a light on bias within the structure. One thing that you might want to ask about, particularly if you're in an organization that has a standardized review process, particularly if you are asked to give peer evaluations, which then feed into somebody else's evaluation process, ask if you can get trained on how to give feedback. Because without training, that feedback is a rat's nest of potential bias. Because if somebody hasn't gone through unconscious bias training, hasn't gone through training on how to do assessments and how to give feedback, they're just coming in with whatever they have. in their own knowledge base, in their own background. And that is a phenomenal way for bias to creep in. And that stuff is additive. A bad peer review 1 year in your eval can haunt somebody long term. And that has ramifications in terms of promotion, in terms of raises, in terms of bonuses, all of that stuff. So ask. You are at a place where you can ask the question. And I'm going to give one more thing, and then I'm going to shut up so that it's more discussion based. I apologize.
No problem.
So that's like if you're entry level or new to the industry and you're right here and now. But as RJ said, this ain't going to happen overnight. This is a real long game. This isn't just like a marathon. This is an ultra marathon. It's not a sprint. Right now, we're in a time of crisis. I know it feels like a giant time of crisis for y'all. You know who it's an even bigger time of crisis for? Every school-age child who just lost a quarter of their school year for all intents and purposes. And the effect that's going to have on kids is tremendously iniquitous. Our educational system is already systemically racist and iniquitous. And now that's just going to snowball even more. So if you have time and bandwidth, volunteer, tutor, help kids get the particularly elementary and middle school age, get the base skills they need in order to stay on track for later in junior high and high school. The single biggest educational impediment to students pursuing STEM majors in college and as careers is whether or not they have access to and take advantage of Algebra 1 in 8th grade. It is that simple. It is the single strongest educational sort of signpost of, is a kid going to major in STEM in college? So all those engineering jobs in our industry, are they going to pursue a STEM career? Now multiply that across all of the educational inequity we're seeing as a result of COVID closures. So you're sitting around, not a whole lot to do right now other than desperately put in job applications. Reach out to some educational initiatives in your area. Reach out to the Girls and Boys Club. Reach out to any of those institutions and see if you can volunteer in some way. Shutting up now so we can be more discussion based.
I want to just share a story. I like stories. I'm going to pull up a comment, which is what made me remember this. So do you think the problem is of people getting rejected the jobs or a lack of applications? And so this made me remember a lot of things. I'm going to go ahead and start with my own personal story about how I got reconnected with RJ. So several months ago, someone tweeted out a photo of Imagineering. Well, I didn't mean to say that. Of a company, a company out there, and it was a project team, and there was a lack of diversity in that photo. And I started a dialogue on Twitter about it. I'm not very active on Twitter, and I said, hey, like, I see that there's, somebody posted that there was a lack of diversity within it. And I said, like, what do you recommend? How do we solve this? And I go to TEA events, I go to networking events, and I don't see people of color there. I see we post jobs opportunities, and I don't see people of color actively applying for those positions. And I was I feel, looking back at it now, very naive, and with the idea that I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I was a part of a system where I would, if somebody wanted the job opportunity, or we were looking for a project coordinator or a graphic designer or an entry-level employee, we would look at our same networks. We would look at who knows who and who knows what. And unfortunately, if you're, I'm just going to be very candid, if you're a white person, you probably know white people. So now you're asking for white people to ask and recruit other white people. And that is a part of the problem. And Cynthia talked very much about that in her previous talk at SATE. But within that Twitter discussion, I got connected with RJ. And it was this person is trying to do outreach. It's all about outreach. And so I think it is so important to understand that things that we do that we think are inconsequential are a part of the system that is creating a lack of diversity in the industry. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I saw that comment go by and was like, why not both? It's both things. RJ, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it really. And here's the interesting thing. There is already quite a bit of talent that are just ready to be given an opportunity. And so, like for example, with Creative Quest, we have a group, a private minority part, where we actually dig deeper into these issues, especially when it comes down to applications and jobs, and just hearing the stories of people as they apply for certain roles. One of them really stood out to me. They were working with another major company that won in themed entertainment, was on an intern, and was actually was promised a job to be able to move up in the company. And very, very amazing talent. And actually he was supposed to be shadowing this particular person that was retiring. And so he was just so excited about, moving into this new opportunity. And within 2 weeks, it was like, oh, well, we gave it to somebody else. And it just so happened, it wasn't a minority. It was another colleague, a majority colleague, and didn't have as much skill set, didn't have as much, experience. And literally, it was handed over without an explanation. And so it's interesting how there is an assumption that, there aren't people that can apply or have the skill sets. Sometimes it's about the way the role looks, and you don't want a certain person to play that particular role. And some people think that, it's that's more what I call charming racism, where it's not like I don't hate you, but I just don't think that you fit this particular look for this type of role, and plus it has a lot of weight to it, and we want it to look a certain way. So I mean, there's an assumption as well that some people of color don't know how to do anything with like virtual reality, or don't know how to create things for ride structures or stuff like that. And you look at a lot of HBCUs, especially in Florida, they have organizations that has funded HBCUs entirely for them to learn how to do virtual reality on rides and immersive experiences, for them to get jobs in entertainment. And a lot of these recruiters, they skip over a lot of these schools into the more high-end schools that they know of, Ivy League schools. They think that they're going to get the best of the best, and think that a lot of HBCUs are not going to have the talent that they need to succeed. And so it's kind of like it's unfortunate, because it actually is the reverse. Some of the most talented people that I've seen has come out of these schools, and all they need is just an opportunity to be heard, and to be able to apply. And then once applied, not be profiled because their name, for example, Chandria Johnson. It's like, well, we don't want anybody with a name like that to represent us. And so that in itself is the issue. It's not that they don't have applications; it's that they're pretty much tossing them to the side.
Cynthia, you have a lot of comments to say about that. You all about the mistake.
Yeah, it is not any one simple thing. As with so many other things that we've discussed today, it is not. And I totally echo what RJ said. But as an industry, we're often complicit in going to the same well. And we only send the person to the job fair at, and I'm going to pick on some schools by name. I apologize. They're fine schools. We only go to the job fair at CalArts, or we only send the person to the job fair at UCF or SCAD, or have the students from CMU in. There are thousands of colleges and universities coast to coast. And as an industry, oftentimes we don't do a great job reaching out deeper than the usual suspects. And I don't just mean going to job fairs. I mean sending the job postings. Every campus that has a TEA club or organization, companies should be sending their job postings to those career offices at those schools, and we don't do it. We're really bad at letting people know that this is a valid, I realize it feels a little shaky right now, valid, viable industry to go into in the first place, and how to get into it. We're not great at doing that. We're horrible at what Patrick alluded to, how we do, particularly for those mid-level and upper-level jobs, how we do those searches. It's the, who do we know who's available? Who do we know who's a good fit? Well, then you get a table that looks like everybody who is around for that discussion in the first place. And that aces out minorities tremendously. We're awful at looking at resumes or portfolios and not bringing that bias to the table. RJ mentioned a name, if a name codes, we're bad at that too. And so there are many, many steps that as an industry we can take. There are software programs out there that will search job descriptions and postings for bias language. There are ways to strip identifying info off of applications so that someone, no matter how many times you've sent them through unconscious bias training, still brings some of that to the table. They can't kibosh that application because of the name or because of the school they went to. There are all kinds of things that go into this. It's not any one simple, if we just do A, then B. It's a whole gamish of things.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm just sitting back and loving the show. I'm going to go back and rewatch it 3 times today. Kelly, I know you had a question.
I did. I had somebody came specifically asked me this a couple days ago, and I promised this person I would not reveal them as my source. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question. What advice would you give to someone who experienced or witnessed covert discrimination within their TEA club or TPEG, but's afraid to speak out for fear of losing professional connections? And this can literally go it doesn't have to be a TEA club. It could be the university. It could be the, department within the, you guys are smart.
A company where you're at, where you see discrimination.
Okay. RJ, do you mind if I take this from the academia perspective first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So full disclosure, my partner is a department chair, interim department chair and a full professor at an urban university. He has been in faculty governance and all kinds of stuff for years. So I have a little bit more intel on university structure than your average bear in the industry might. If you are at a university and you witness a bias incident in a club, generally speaking, that club is going to have a faculty sponsor. It's very rare to have a college or university where there's an officially recognized club that gets dollars from the student fee and there's not a faculty or staff sponsor. You need to go to that sponsor. You need to document it immediately. Document it and go to that faculty sponsor. Follow up on that meeting with that faculty or staff, sometimes it's staff sponsor. And if you do not get a satisfactory response, generally a college or university is going to have an ombudsman or a student relations. Oftentimes I'll be like a vice chancellor or a vice provost or dean of or what have you. You can absolutely go up the chain. You can report to that ombuds person, depending upon what the incident you witnessed was. You can go to generally there's going to be a Title IX office at the college or university. You can report there as well and get information on how to report. But for as horrible and awful sometimes the networking in this industry is, as much as it can feel like it is a cabal of entrenched people high up who can toast your career in a heartbeat, there are so many more people coming up under that sort of level of entrenchment who do not operate that way. And if you see something happen at the college level in a TEA club, number one, it's not going to dog you for the rest of your life if you report it. It's not going to just nuke your connections. Number two, you have chains of authority at that college to report. You also theoretically, and Patrick, maybe you know this better than I do. I feel bad that I don't have a really solid answer with a directive to it. But these clubs are under the TEA banner. So you can alert TEA Next Gen leadership as well, so that they know that there's an issue and they can help intervene.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would add something to that too. Another thing that causes this to be an issue is enabling it to continue. And so saying something is so important. It really does break the mold of racism and discrimination. Because again, when people send a blind eye to things that they know are issues, that you're actually being a part of the issue now. So in order for you to go against the grain and actually change how things are going to be perceived, and not only that, just change the culture of how we work together, you have to keep each other accountable. And so yes, definitely call it what it is, and get with the right people to make those decisions to say, hey, we're not going to do this in this club. We're not going to have it on this job, with that type of discrimination, because that is adding on to a mountain that we're all trying to chisel down right now.
Yep. So we have so many comments and questions. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna put one up there for discussion if you guys don't mind, or people don't mind. A reason I feel like the industry doesn't send people to HBCUs or non-predominantly white schools is because decision makers may feel like people of color may not be interested in the industry or just don't know about it altogether. Kelly seems to have her hand raised, so why don't we? Kelly, please.
Really quick, I know there are so many highly impressive and just amazing HBCUs, right? Just out in the world, our world, that I think this is coming from an outside because I'm just now getting in here. But I think that if the industry is really wanting to make solid movements towards hiring inclusive and diverse cast members, team members, whatever the company calls it, that they're actually going to have to actively recruit. And I know several already do this. It just hasn't been as far reaching as it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, that's all.
Yeah.
RJ and Cynthia.
No, you're exactly right. Like recently, a company reached out to me and asking for some meet and greets. Want to meet people of color that are interested. I actually are in the industry already or have the skill sets and just want to be able to have a conversation. So what you can do is you can reach out to to both of our organizations. And if you really don't know how to approach this, we can help guide you. So you can get to know people. And not feel like there is no one that's interested or there's no skill sets. You want to be able to get that bias out the way, get that perspective, because that slows down the process. But there are people that are willing and ready, and I think a lot of this too is just just the education, especially with that was in the previous comment. That there's an assumption that people of color don't know how to do this. I mean, you got to keep in mind, this culture was based off of, people not knowing things. I mean, people were lynched and killed for not knowing how to read and write. So blocking out information is a part of what caused racism to stay consistent, throughout the years. And so dismantling that, and then not only that, empowering and giving people an opportunity to have a seat at the table is what's going to change a lot of the philosophy about the problem.
Yeah. Another book that I realized I probably should have mentioned, to tie into what RJ was saying. We have a lot of sort of like, dewy-eyed, rose-colored glasses about the industry and theme parks in particular, and aren't museums wonderful? No, museums are rooted in conquest. Our collections stem from conquering and subjugation. I showed the data. Our boards are white. Our leadership is white. Museums suck at this. And theme parks, if you want a light, happy, fun read, then pick up a copy of Victoria, I'm going to get her last name wrong, Victoria Wolcott's Race, Riots, and Roller Coasters, The Struggle Over Segregated Recreation in America, which looks in particular at Jim Crow civil rights era and the changing nature of recreation, including amusement parks and theme parks in the US, and how that ties to deep, deep, deep systemic racism. So there is a tremendous, tremendous amount of work to be done, rooting out the racism that is really specifically and toxically part of our history as an industry. And it bleeds into everything. It bleeds into the rides that we should all be like, holy Jesus, I can't believe that this is still a ride that they let people go on, to where we send our recruiters and who we think is capable of doing the work. I saw a question about a TEA club at a school, UCSD, some school, that isn't known for themed entertainment, and so recruiters aren't coming to UCSD. As I said at the top of the show, I live in Kansas City. My partner is a prof at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, which has one of the best conservatories in the nation. They have an amazing, amazing dance program. And it is like pulling teeth for them to get casting agents and recruiters from the big theme parks and theme entertainment companies to come to their showcases, or to even give their students a shot. Yes, there are absolutely these blinders. I think right now is very much a time of strike while the iron is hot. Send the mass letters out to the companies, because right now everybody's like looking at themselves and going, oh, we suck at this. So send the packet to the companies, talk to the members of your club, and be like, get your portfolio online and polished up. We're going to have a link to our club website to everybody's portfolios, and get that messaging out to the companies and the venues, because they are now paying attention to this stuff, and take advantage of it. Like, take advantage of companies sitting there going, oh, guilt and complicity, we need to do better now. Do it. Get out in front of them.
So before we continue, I want to say Dave had to go to a work call. We appreciate him. And he said he loved everything that was going on, but he had to jump off. He didn't want to interrupt the flow of things. I want to keep this going. Cynthia and RJ, if you have anything they have to do, let us know in the chat. But I'd love to keep this going as much as we can. And there will be more conversations in the future. But I would love to address the comments from our people that are watching. The cost of a visit to a lot of themed entertainment venues affects who develops interest in the area. I remarked to someone at Disney that so many people there were like me, Jews from Long Island. Bob Iger is a Jew from Long Island, and my colleague pointed out that our demographic is likely to have the resources to take their kids to theme parks at a young age. Those kids grew up to try to get into the industry. Before we continue, that is me. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I grew up down the street from Disneyland. My parents could afford the $90. Well, to be fair, back then, annual passes to the Disney parks were a lot more affordable than they are today. You didn't have to get an interest loan or no interest loan to do them. But I was exposed to it, and I was obsessed with it, and I came into it. I think this is such an important question that I'd love to just post to the group to discuss. And I know Cynthia and RJ, I'm sure you guys have thoughts about this.
The cost of a visit Of course, for certain people, money is an issue, but there is an assumption as well that people of color don't have money. We a lot of us do, so we actually can afford to go to theme parks. The only thing is that what's interesting is that when you go to a lot of these parks, there isn't a lot of people of color that are attending as well, and so representation. The of people that are out there, it's so amazing. I've been to plenty of theme parks where it was pretty much just my family was the only people that of color that were there. So so it's kind of a two-edged sword a little bit. It's not that you can't afford it. It's also the way that the system works. Because I always say that you can tell how the system is working when you see who's on vacation. And a lot of times when you go to a lot of these theme parks, you don't see a lot of people of color that are able to break away to be able to have good times with their families, because a lot of times their jobs or things that that requires them to stay are not allowing them to break away, and are working extremely hard hours for low pay. And I understand every culture has that, but especially in the African American community and in the minority community, there's a lot of issues there that a lot of us know are have to be honest. That is a major issue. And so it's a mixture of things. It's not just one way. A lot of people can afford to go, but then it's also tied to the way that the system works that doesn't give anybody an opportunity to take a break.
Or that punishes them if they take a break. To the point you made earlier, RJ, of having to work 5-6 times harder and kick butt that much more, you're not going to get the same reaction to, you know what, I'm taking a week off and I'm taking my family to insert name of fantabulous place. Systemically, you're going to have repercussions for doing that I won't. And that's shitty. I mean, let's just call it what it is. And if I am a minority, do I want to spend my hard-earned dollars and the time off that I can manage to take going into a place where I am not represented, where I don't see myself? And in the cases of legions of museums, I am actively not wanted. Somebody a while ago in the chat mentioned, I think, Huntington Gardens. And there was an incident at the Huntington Gardens, I want to say 2 years ago, I could be wrong on the timeline, where a mom of color and her 2-year-old were followed and harassed by a security guard in a way that 2 white moms with their kids in strollers were not. The great irony is they were looking at a collection of work by a Black woman and she was getting harassed. And we hear these stories out of museums over and over and over again of security guards following the field trip group from the predominantly Black elementary school and not the white elementary school that's in at exactly the same time. Why would I ever, if I'm that kid, why would I go home and tell my parents, we should go to this museum this weekend? They have really cool stuff. Why would I do that? And so the exclusion is not, it's not strictly economic. It's not strictly who can afford to get into the park. Although that is a, like, who can afford to go is a giant.
Get a loan and then you can go to the park.
When the average price of a 5-day Disney vacation for a family of 4 is over $5,000.
Yeah.
Woof. But it is not just about economics. It is about how we train our staff, who's represented in our spaces, who is telling whose voices are centered, who's got the narrative authority in a space. It is all of these things tied together.
RJ, if you're willing, I know that you have many friends and people who have experienced discrimination or even a part of discrimination in the industry. I'm putting you on the spot here, but would you mind shedding a light on experiences that you've had? Because I think it's important for people to realize we have a lot of people watching about what is going on behind the scenes. And I think there's a lot of people that don't realize that some conduct is discrimination and harmful to people. Would you feel comfortable sharing that? If not, feel free to say no, but okay.
I'll be honored to. There are numerous levels to this. Of course, like I was saying, as an African American family that would go on vacation, even there's discrimination with that. It's like, oh, why are they here? Or why or there must be troublemakers, or he must be a basketball player. There's a lot of assumptions where it's just, hey, I'm just here with my family, just like how you're here with your family. So that's one level of it. Then you have, I've had experiences working at actual parks where you already have a ID, you already have backstage access. And because of the way you look, there's an assumption that you don't work there. I've been stopped by police numerous times on the job with an assumption that I didn't work there. And even showing them an ID, it was like, oh, this can't be you. I'm like, you see my face on the picture. But yeah, those moments, I mean, there was even one guy, he just said, I'm just going to tell your supervisor, you're not wearing your ID right now. I'm just like, does you see my ID is on right now? But some people are looking, for you to trip up and to have a reason to say, see, that's what people of color always do. There's always a justification thing that they're looking for to add on to the narrative and not to fix the issues. I mean, it's incredible, the things that I've seen. Another thing too, which is interesting in themed entertainment, you have people that come from abroad. I mean, we all know that there's major groups that come in these functions. You see them with the flags and they're excited and they're chanting and they're, some people see it as disruptive, but overall, it's just like if you had your family reunion. I mean, you had your family reunion with 400 people, and it's like, you'll laugh loud and you'll have a good time, and you don't expect anybody to stop you from having a good time. And so when you see people, especially, I've seen this a lot, more focused to my Latin community, that would come on vacation, have their quinceañeras and have like 400 girls or whatever else. And so they'll be backstage and say, I just don't like those people. They need to stop singing. They need to stop, chanting. And I hate it when they do that. They need to go back where they came from. I mean, all those things are very hurtful. Here's an interesting thing. And this is, I know we have a lot of, especially the Brazilian groups that would come. And a lot of those biased statements on theme parks have been centered around this culture. Keep in mind, and I want to make sure that you understand, when the slave trade happened, there were plenty of ships that didn't just go to United States. Actually, 4 times more ships came from Africa and went straight to Brazil. So imagine the levels of slavery that was in that area. And so in many cases, those are my brothers and sisters down there as well. They've been facing slavery since the early 1500s, and they still have 4 times as many slaves that were shipped there than the US. And so when there is a bias about, oh, well, it's just these types of people, you can't, especially when you have a diverse community as the minorities, we come from all different walks of life. So in many cases, you're talking about all of us when you do things like that. You never know, where people come from, especially for me. I have Scottish roots. I have Irish roots. I have cousins in England as well. But you wouldn't know that unless I told you, So the assumptions it gets people in trouble all the time, especially in this community. You really want to make sure you pay attention to that, because it makes you lose perspective and makes you look like you don't know what's going on.
Cynthia, I have, I keep putting you guys on the spot here, but I've worked with women in my industry, or in my, I've always had women bosses. I've always been entrenched when I've always had this like perspective that women are equal. They've had that. But a person I have worked with in the past, I'm going to try to keep anonymous, has said that she could never get to that VP title because she was a woman. And she felt it, and it saddened me. And she saw people come off the street or come with very little experience get it. And do you have any thoughts on that? Would you be able to comment on that as we kind of come to a closure tonight?
Sorry. Thoughts on that? Well, 6 hours later.
Take as much time as you want.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
Let me be really, really clear at the outset. When we look at the data, things have demonstrably gotten better up the chain for white women. They have not gotten better to a statistical significance for women of color. And I am as guilty as the next middle-aged, suburban, college-educated white woman of being a white feminist. It is the era of feminism that I came out of. It is what I was in school until I got to a certain level in my education taught. Intersectionality was not a thing. My mom did the best she could. She's an amazing woman. She's got a triple major degree from Northwestern while living at home and commuting and working 3 jobs because she was that poor. And one of her degrees was in sociology. And she did everything she could, but so much education was geared at white feminism and not intersectional feminism because the generation I am, that it is a constant struggle to interrogate that and undo that programming and think from an intersectional viewpoint. That said, there are traditional structures in our society which, when they come up against the ways that we evaluate and promote, especially in themed entertainment, are an absolute impediment to moving up the chain for women. Setting aside for a moment all of the gender in the workplace issues around she's bitchy or she's bossy, as opposed to she is opinionated and she brings the stuff to back it up, or she is the boss. She is supposed to actually boss people around, kind of thing. Setting aside all of that gender stuff for a moment, so much advancement in our field is tied to turns in the field or projects that you have seen all the way through or been on start to finish. And when you couple that with the realities for women who would be at the point now of trying to step up into a VP role, or who within the past 10, 15 years were trying to get into those roles. When you look at the realities of the expectations of mothering, of sandwich generation, of taking care of your aging parents or other family members, in addition to everything you're doing, these traditional gender norms that we put on people, it's really damaging to a woman's ability to be with a project beginning to end. Go out and do a year in field halfway around the world. It's freaking hard. And if we do not deconstruct the systemically biased power structures that really damage minorities in our industry, at the same time we're interrogating those structures and dismantling them, we need to look at how they also harm other traditionally underrepresented identities within the industry.
Yeah.
like I said at the outset, it's a lot better for white women now than it was. It's still not great. When the TEA announced the Thea Award winners last November, I literally sat down and cried that Nancy Cerruto won the Buzz Prize and Wendy Hyman Nunes won the Peter Chernak Award. It's the first time that 2 women have won those. And I will never forget running into a staffer from the TEA who informed me that even though a woman has won the Buzz Prize previously, not the majority, and let's not talk about how many minorities have won the Buzz Prize. Let's just not even go there. But the staffer told me that they had to redo the plate on the Buzz Prize award because it referred to his contributions to the field.
Wow.
2019.
Oh my gosh.
They had to change the wording. And it was like,
What?
hey, we got a long way to go. Yeah. I know there are legions and legions and legions of people who we have lost from the industry because they have bumped up against the ceiling. No matter how high up the ceiling was, there was a ceiling there for them. And they ran into it, and eventually they got tired of concussing themselves against that ceiling, whether it was a ceiling because of race, whether it was a ceiling because of gender, whether it was a ceiling because of ability. We haven't even touched on how awful this industry is for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
And I say this as a parent of a kid who's rocking a pretty significant diagnosis. We have lost so many good people out of the industry who we will now never see. Even if they come back into the industry, they're so far behind on the career track now, we're never going to see their expertise and what they have to share at that VP level. And that's dispiriting.
Yeah.
Dispiriting note. I'm sorry.
No. I just we were almost at 2 hours, which is a long time and not long enough to really talk about this. I had a few thoughts about everything that you were saying. I just wanted to say out to my fellow people who are listening out there that, all right, I'm gonna put myself full screen. I am very thankful that all of you stuck out and watched this entire webinar, this live stream, whatever we call it, the show. This is very important. I know there's a lot of you that are watching right now. I really appreciate it. This is uncomfortable for everyone. Facing these truths is uncomfortable. It is, in my point of view, necessary. I want to applaud Cynthia and RJ, who are both amazing people that are willing to come on and share their opinion, which can be very hard to do in this time. And we mentioned that earlier. Kelly mentioned that earlier, that people are reaching out to their Black friends or their, whatever friends. And this is a very challenging time for so many people of color, BIPOC. And I just really appreciate them being willing to come onto this forum and talk about it to our community that we have here. Because this needs to happen, and I'm really appreciative that we have a forum where we can do this very quickly and speak freely. So I want to, I just have so much admiration and appreciative for both of them. I'm going to bring them both back on the stream, but I wanted that to be very sincere, because I am very sincere about them coming on and being willing to speak truth in this day and age. And I'll keep saying a few more things. I know that we have a lot of people watching right now that love what we're doing, keeping connected with students. And you guys, the fact that you stayed with us is so important. The fact that we had dozens and dozens of people that are still here after 2 hours. Oh, that's so good. That's so fantastic. It's uncomfortable, but we can make change. And we all have to confront these things that are happening. And we have to, Cynthia, your speech at SATE, which I have to link in this thing, about being willing to give up power. I'm going to give it all up. I have a platform here because I'm just some kook who has some weird media and I can put a live show together. I want to give it the power so that more people can come in this industry because I think it's so important. I think that we can talk about this for another 3 hours today, but we should wind down. But I would love to invite you guys to come back on and to bring more voices into the equation in a month. And we know that I already said it. Next week, or 2 weeks from now, we're going to do a virtual thing where we bring people together just to chat. And I would welcome RJ and Cynthia to be a part of that. 12 o'clock Eastern. I think it's the 26th. We're going to do that. Whew. But this is so fantastic. And I appreciate Kelly, Dave, and RJ and Cynthia for sharing your stories. Well, not so much Dave and myself, but mostly you guys for being willing to do that. I would love to, Cynthia and RJ and Kelly, if you have any closing thoughts, please bring them. Before I start crying, please say what you may. RJ, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity, Pat. It is really an informative time that we had for our viewers, and just as my shirt here, diversity and inclusion is dope. That is what we need right now. We need to be able to see how beneficial it is that diversity and inclusion, and the inclusion part is the empowering part. And so just know that, this is your time. This is your opportunity to make a difference in the world and to embrace your brother, embrace your sister from all walks of life. Create. Creativity is meant for everyone. There is no color or creed that's tied to that. Everyone has the power to create, and everyone has the right to create. So let's all do that together. And if you want to follow what we're doing with Creative Quest Foundation, feel free to our website, creativequestfoundation.com. You'll see our initiative there and what we're doing. And we're a community. We really want to be able to, especially for the new age of graduates. By the way, congratulations for graduating, especially during such a time as this. I truly commend you for being so awesome. But yeah, this is the opportunity for you to shine, and there's a place for you at the table, no matter what the color of your skin is, or your background, or your orientation. It doesn't matter. Everyone has the right to work together and have a great time doing it. And so, Pat, thank you so much for everything you're doing, and the team. It was just a pleasure. And Cynthia, thank you so much for partnering with me on this. This is really the beginning of something great.
RJ, it's been fantastic to work on this with you. And Patrick, thank you for pulling this together and for extending the offer to continue the conversation in future. I think that's great and fantastic and important. And I'm delighted to have that opportunity. As RJ said, this is a time, and this work isn't going to be done in a day, a week, a month, a year. We're not going to turn around 10 years from now and go, woohoo, done, handled it. We knocked systemic racism out of themed entertainment and the American culture at large. We're good. We're done now. It's not going to work that way. And this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I find myself telling particularly white peers, colleagues, friends who are new to thinking about this stuff or engaging in this work, that, as I said earlier, you're going to be uncomfortable, you're going to get it wrong, and you really need to listen, and you need to do the work of educating yourself. But you also you do not need to solve every problem every minute of every day. You don't have the bandwidth to, you don't have the knowledge to, you're not going to be able to. We need everyone in this. We need everyone's voice and effort in tackling these issues. Everyone has something to contribute, and everyone brings something different to the table in contributing it. The what can I do as a new to the industry person is the answer to that is radically different than what can I do this as somebody who's been in the industry for 5 years and I have a network, even if it's still kind of small, or I've been in this industry 15 years. What can I do? We need all of you. We need your strength. We need your voice. We need your commitment. We need your willingness to learn and your willingness to do the work. And it is okay to momentarily take a step back and put your own oxygen mask on. This discussion has come to the forefront at a point when we've already experienced about 12 weeks of a different ongoing trauma with COVID. Our world was turned topsy-turvy. It hit certain people much, much harder than others. We can get into all of the optics of racism in healthcare and stuff like that, but that's a different talk. So your reserves were already probably a little bit low, and now you're throwing yourself wholeheartedly into this. Don't burn yourself out. You do, to quote from Perkea Vote, you do not have to complete the work. You don't need to finish the work, but neither can you turn away from it. So make sure that you recharge your own tank. Put on your own oxygen mask when you need to, because we need you at the table and we need you doing the work with us. There was a really great question towards the end here about next time, about cultural biases beyond race and gender, not only in our industry, but about people worldwide. Oh, thank you. That is a great question. And it's something that I've actually been tackling a little bit in some of the spaces in our industry, because I'm getting our industry does theme parks and insert name of country that does not have the greatest human rights track record. I would encourage you between now and then to dig into, if you have not already, systemic racism in this country and how the US, in its structures and systems, is unique in how thoroughly, completely, and comprehensively it is built on the othering and dehumanization of an entire population. Structurally, we're dealing with some really different things in the US here when it comes to race than many, many, many other countries in the world. And there are plenty of countries with giant racism problems.
True.
But they're different than ours. And so if you do a little bit of digging into that before the next time we get together, that'll help inform that discussion, and it'll be even richer.
I had one thing to kind of, I don't like the term piggybacking, but I'll just throw it out there. There are many countries with many, many, many problems, socioeconomic as well as, racial disparity and sexual discrimination, discrimination altogether. The one country that we can affect is this one, because we can vote here. I need to throw that out there. We can affect this country because this is where we live and this is where we vote.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, it's like, all right, here we go. I'm just gonna make a final comment. And we've gone, this is our longest session we've ever done. A lot of viewers watching.
I totally fail at taking a day off of work. This is my day off.
I will just say that I want to give a shout out to Viacom CBS which is the employer that I work for. They took a big stand. They sent out a message, and last Tuesday they did Blackout Tuesday, which is when I reached out and met with dozens of people of color and introduced myself to them in the industry. Some may be watching right now, and I just will say that I appreciate that that there is a movement going on right now. There is a movement. We're harnessing that energy, and I'm listening. I'm hearing. I am trying to do what I can to help. I am trying to understand, but I realize that my lens that I have is so much different than so many people out there. And I just want to thank everyone who's watching. I want to thank Cynthia, thank RJ, thank Kelly, thank Dave for being a part of this. We're going to be back in 2 weeks with some sort of Zoom call. We'll figure it out where we can get next gen, TA next gen, people that are recent graduates, anybody that wants to come. We're going to have an open forum. Off the grid, we'll do it, and just a fun little session. And then I hope that a month from now, I'm going to put on the spot. Cynthia and RJ will be willing to come back on this program and talk about like the 20 other topics that we had on our little outline that we didn't get to that we could talk about, because this is so important. It needs to stay at the front of line. And there's so much goodwill right now to do it. There's a will, there's a way. So thank you everybody for joining us. I'm going to give everybody a wave, a little goodbye, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.